When the World Comes to Texas is a podcast from our partners at KERA in North Texas, exploring what it means to bring the World Cup to the Lone Star State. We're sharing these episodes every Tuesday night through June 16th at texasstandard.org. You can find out more and find the program wherever you get your podcasts.
It's the world's biggest sport, and it's about to make its splash here in the U.S. I'm Ron Corning.
I'm Miranda Suarez.
And we're your hosts for When the World Comes to Texas,
a new limited series podcast from KERA News about the 2026 FIFA World Cup and all things North Texas soccer.
Well, if you are not a soccer aficionado, you may not be aware that Dallas has one of the premier youth academies for professional soccer in the world. Since 2005, FC Dallas Youth Academy has trained young people from all over the country. Many of them have gone on to have professional soccer careers all over the world. In fact, several former FC Dallas youth are set to play in the upcoming World Cup.
But how did one of the best youth academies start in an area where football usually means something completely different? Chris Hayden is the director for FC Dallas Youth, and he is here to tell us all about it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
FC Dallas Youth has been operating for 20 years. In those 20 years, how did you build it to become such a prestigious program where it is producing World Cup players?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you asked me back 21 years ago, we had a plan and some really great people working that plan. But I think, somewhat by accident and mostly by the commitment and the investment that our owners have made. We work for the Hunt family is really synonymous with soccer and the growth of soccer in the country, and we've had a lot of key stakeholders and really important people working in that youth development space that I think have made it a reality now. And in the early days, I don't know that even though it was an idea that we were going to be able to have success and do it, I think there weren't any clear examples of it. So I think looking back on it, we've come a long way, but I think in the early days, it's difficult to envision.
We'll talk about this from all sides, of course, from the training program to recruiting and all of that. But let's talk, if we can, for a moment about the infrastructure, like having a soccer-specific stadium, which I know you have in Frisco. You had told us it was the third in the country, the third soccer-specific stadium. How key do you think that was to beginning to build momentum around this program?
Well, I mean, our owners were visionaries, and that was and really instrumental in the growth and the stability in MLS. But also not just the stadium, but the vision to have a complex on the site where we have 17, natural grass and turf fields that are literally on this in the footprint of the stadium, in the shadow of the stadium, and that field, the complex plus the stadium together, has really allowed us to scale our youth club because you need places to train. It's difficult to have enough adequate facilities to train the number of players that we do, and we're really fortunate to have that facility. And as players are training near the stadium, there's this proximity. It's proximity with the first team and proximity with high-level players, and that really helps foster the dream. It's not something that's just an idea. It's really tangible because if you're a youth player and an academy player in our club, you're literally training on the field next to our professional players. You're in locker rooms, 6 feet away from where the first team locker rooms are. So, and we say sometimes that 6 feet is the farthest 6 feet that they'll ever walk, but it's definitely, it's credible for a player to be that close and in proximity of high level players, and they aspire to be the same. So I think that's a real advantage that we have.
So soccer fans probably already know that, like in Europe, this is a very common thing. There's like the youth academy. You start off affiliated with a professional team when you're very, very young. Some people go on to play for those teams. When this started in 2005, was this even a thing in the U.S. yet, or were you guys kind of on the vanguard of establishing that same feeder system here?
Well, there were a lot of examples internationally of clubs that were successful in developing players, and yeah, this was a new frontier for domestic players. There were always, and have always been, really talented youth players here in the States going back 30, 40 years. The challenge is then giving them and investing in them in a way that really allows them to reach their potential. Clubs really need, and clubs develop players, and clubs really need to invest in that project. But yeah, I remember sitting in living rooms with high-level players here and getting the question, what does it look like for my son? Like the pathway was always college and then maybe professionally. It still is in some ways, but for a high level player that aspired to be a pro, that was always a question. Like, give me an example of a player that's done this before. And domestically, the answer was it's never happened. Like, no one's ever developed a player here in a club that's ended up playing professionally for that club.
And so you've had to turn that out.
Yeah.
And I'm not aware of this, so please, and there may be people listening as well who are not. How many of the FC Dallas Youth Academy players have cycled through and back to or gone on to FC Dallas?
We've signed since 2009. We signed our first player in 2009. So we were a couple of years into this project before we signed our first. But since then, I think we've signed near 50 players.
Wow.
To the first team. Quite a few of them are playing in Europe, and now some of them have retired that have gone and had a 300 game career in MLS. And
what is the lifespan of a soccer player?
Well, it's tricky. I think field players can play into their mid to late 30s if they really take care of themselves, and goalkeepers a bit longer. So, 300 games is a lot of international and a lot of professional matches, but 400 or 500 games is possible.
Is that part of the program to sort of set expectations for what a career can look like and what some of the downturns might be or what some of the obstacles might be?
Well, yeah, we deal in the academy space. We deal with really young players, so they're sort of bulletproof. They're not thinking about how to take care of themselves as a 35-year-old. But I think there are a lot of challenges in professional soccer that will come along in the career of a player. And really, with young players, one of the most important things is that they are having difficulty or stress or challenges that they need to overcome. And sometimes it's a red flag when you have players that have a lot of success at a young age and never really deal with any type of adversity. They're the best player on their team. They always play. They get a lot of accolades. And they're playing with players in and around their own experience level and age. And then they step into professional football, soccer, and then they're playing with players 10 years older that have a lot of experience, that are much more seasoned. And it's difficult because you go from a really successful era to some challenges. So players in our academy are exposed to a lot of obstacles. For instance, we have a lot of our top talents that play up in age. They would have extreme success playing in their own age because they're the best. And then we, at a very young age, will push them up year 2, 3, and they're playing in games over their head. And it's a great, it's something that they're going to need to be able to overcome in the future. And if they're not exposed to that, it really can create a problem, and it's really insurmountable sometimes for even really talented players to deal with that adversity when it comes.
What do you think it is about North Texas that makes it a feeder for professional soccer?
Well, I grew up in the area, and I mean, this area is really competitive. I mean, I don't know if it's Texas and
you mean across the board?
Yeah, just in sports
athletics.
In general. I think sports in general, we have a lot of ingredients that I think make Dallas sort of a melting pot and a hotbed for building and creating talented players. And probably starts, there's a lot of things, but maybe the climate, you can sort of play year round here. There's a lot of multi-sport families and, ex-athletes that have kids that live here and grow up in the area. Texas is a great place to live. Dallas is a great place to live. You have a lot of professionals that are here. And we even have players that are playing high-level youth soccer in our club, and their parents were professional athletes in something else, and so they know the pathway for themselves and are really dialed in to helping their kids succeed. So it's just a really competitive area, and that competitiveness has been here my entire life. As a youth player, it was that way. As a youth coach, it was that way, and it's still that way.
Do you think you've had experiences where players are athletic in a general sense and can't quite figure out where they need to be, and maybe they've tried football or basketball, and then soccer has slowly and increasingly become an option, and they find that that's where their talent lies? Do you see that happen?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of examples of that. Sometimes sort of to the dismay of their parents who would prefer that they play other things.
They have a different dream for them.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I think there's a lot of tremendous athletes now that are coming into soccer, and that maybe wasn't the case 10 or 15 years ago. It's a prestige thing. There's a lot of money involved with pro sports here domestically, and I think young kids grow up, boys and girls grow up thinking, I want to be the next Michael Jordan, I want to be the next Andre Agassi, I want to be the next whatever, you know. And so now there are more and more examples of really interesting domestic players playing on the international stage in soccer.
Are they coming on board and saying, I want to be the next Ricardo Pepe?
Yeah, Ricardo was a kid that was really super talented. We have FC Dallas is locally, we have about 275 teams, but we also have affiliates outside of the city, and we had an affiliate and still have an affiliate in El Paso, Texas. And Ricardo was from El Paso, and obviously at the time we had several players that had come from El Paso that had success, that had signed contracts with us, and so there were examples. Alex Zendejas is at America right now, and he had come from El Paso. Mikey Ambrose played in the league from El Paso. Aaron Guillen. We had other kids from El Paso that had signed contracts and were pros. And so when Ricardo was 14, he relocated to Dallas with the idea he was a great prospect with a lot of projection, and sort of took a leap of faith, came to Dallas and had immediate success. And his family ended up moving to Dallas afterwards. But in the interim, the idea was he would be trained, developed, and we would see. But it was very early on in his path with us. He had immediate success with his age group. He was scoring 3 goals a game. We moved him up, and he at 16, 15 maybe, he debuted. He was the youngest player and our first player signed to our second team in February that year, and I can't remember the year, but he was 15 or 16, and literally 3 months later we signed him to a first team deal because he had scored 10 or 15 goals in our second team. And he scored on his debut in our first team as well. And then he scored a hat trick in our first team. He debuted for the national team. He scored in his debut with the national team. And then we ended up selling him to Europe, to Augsburg, for our largest transfer ever to Europe. And he's playing for PSV, nearly transferred recently to Fulham. And he's a great human being, so that helps. He's got a lot of support from family and his support system. And he's one of the unique examples of a kid who had a lot of early success and relatively not many setbacks, and he's been able to continue on.
What does it feel like to watch kids from the academy go on to achieve that kind of success?
In the beginning, it was sort of not surprising, but I think it was proud. You're almost like a father, or you're the support family and you were around when things weren't so great, or when they had difficulty, or when they were dealing with adversity. So I think pride first for our staff, because there's a number of people that are involved in the development of players, and then happy for them because their aspirations, and then also this other sense of the impact that they're making on other young players that come after them, because they're sort of trailblazers, pioneers, and then the story becomes more real when there's tangible examples. And
you don't have to say to parents anymore, okay, well, this has actually never happened before. Now you can have examples.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And all of these milestones, in the early days of the academy, to get a player signed was a big deal. Like, oh, this kid's got a pro contract. But then there were a lot of milestones along the way that became really important moments to reinforce the possibilities. A kid gets his debut. Now he's in the first team roster, his first start. A kid gets a goal. We played a match in Columbus back in, it would have been around 2016 maybe, 16 or 17. And I remember that game was a road game against a very good Columbus team. We started 5 homegrowns or academy players under the age of 20 in that game on the road against Columbus, 5. And, that had never been done in the league. And we won the game 3-0 on the road. And
okay, we can do that again. Yeah, that works if you make the right decision.
Yeah, I think all the key stakeholders, when something like that happens, or when a player has a lot of success, instead of it being a possibility, it's sort of the expectation, and everybody is thinking, well, who's the next one? How can we double down here? And starting with Dan Hunt, the Hunt family, and our technical staff, our coaching staff, who believe in young players and development, all the key people, scouts and everyone, are really invested in the same idea. We don't have competing objectives in the club. And so I think it's made it really possible for us to have a lot of success over the years and continued success.
And the Hunts also believe in making sure you all are going to get to see a game.
Yeah, is that right? I was explaining, the World Cup's coming, and the generosity of the family. It's a great thing. We're a family owned company. There's a lot of employees at our organization that have been there for 10, 15, 20 years. We got people that were there when the club was Dallas Burn and like day one people. So there's a lot, the way that the club takes care of its employees is really great. And yeah, the generosity of the family is that all of our full-time staff are going to go to a World Cup game this year on their bill. So
Do you know which one you're seeing?
I'm going to see around a 32 game in Dallas, so that's good. And we don't know it's going to be qualification to see who plays. So it was the draw. That's who I pulled out of the fishbowl.
So hopefully it's a good match.
It'll be a great match, I'm sure. Yeah.
I want to ask you too, you mentioned that you got to also see a World Cup match when the World Cup came to Dallas in 1994.
Yeah.
And what are your biggest memories of that?
Yeah, I was much younger. I had a lot darker hair, and but it was great to have the World Cup here. I had grown up as a young boy and watched World Cups in other places, these exotic places, and the World Cup came to Dallas and to the U.S. And there was a lot of expectation. Only about Dan said this in a meeting the other day, but I think only less than 15% of the people in the U.S. even knew that the World Cup was here prior to the event. And this World Cup that's coming, 99% of the population know that there's a World Cup coming. So we're in a much different moment. But I watched games back in 94 at the Cotton Bowl and have some memories, and it was special. And several teams were in the Dallas area in preparation for the tournament. And I know that this World Cup will really be an additional launching pad for soccer interest, for MLS. Obviously, the U.S. is on stage to the world for the biggest sporting event in the world. Not arguably like it is the biggest event in the world. It's like having a bunch of Super Bowls back to back to back to back. So
we'll raise the profile of FC Dallas Youth Academy too, I would think.
I hope so. I mean, we have at least I think 4 players will likely make this year's World Cup team if they can stay healthy for the next month or two, and maybe 5, but 4 for sure. And I'm pretty sure based on the latest matches that have been played by the U.S. squad. So we're proud. Those guys come in and out of Dallas sometimes for camps, and they always go around the office and say hi to their old coaches and old staff and the receptionist and everyone. So these are our kids. They grew up and played with us, and now they're playing on the biggest stage. So I know they're proud. I know we're proud of them.
And who are those players? Who can people watch out for?
Yeah, well, I mean, Weston McKennie's a pretty big one. I mean, he's playing at Juventus and having a great season. He's arguably probably the best international season of any of the U.S. players right now. And he was in our club for 8 years in our academy and was a Dallas kid. And he left at a young age to Europe. But Weston will probably be a starting midfielder for the team. Chris Richards played for us in our academy. He's playing for Crystal Palace, and he'll probably be a starter. He's coming off a slight injury, but I think he'll be a starting center back for the team. And then you mentioned Ricardo Pepi. I think, hopefully with luck, he can contribute. He's played in the most recent matches, and he had broken his arm a few months ago, but he's come back now from that and looks to be in really good form and has had a good season at PSV. And Tanner Tessman's another one. He's playing at Lyon. He was the captain of the U20 national team. Pochettino likes him a lot. So he's played in these last games with Belgium. And I think, I think he's going to make the squad as well. And then I'm still holding out hope for Alexander Haas. It's possible. He's played in some of the qualifying games, and he's still in the discussion. So 4 or 5, but quite a few. So.
Yeah.
Your recall of all of this is impressive.
Yeah.
We won't ask you to name like the first 100 members of the Youth Academy going back to 2005. That's a test we won't put on you today. But Chris Hayden, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation today.
It's been a pleasure, and really looking forward to the World Cup. And thank you so much for having me.
Chris Hayden, Director for FC Dallas Youth.